then let's go on. And now I invite the research director of the Nézőpont Institute, Mr. Mihály Rosonczy-Kovács, who will speak about the Hungarian-Polish relationship, about problems and about issues.
Thank you very much. Welcome everyone. It's quite challenging to give a presentation at 3 p.m. That's the danger period, that it is always said that don't put any meeting on 3 p.m. because no one will listen to you. So those of you who stayed here are really the heroes of the Hungarian-Polish relationship. I hope that it will be worth staying. We are dwarves standing on shoulders of giants, as the often quoted saying goes, and I sense the truth of this wisdom very much listening to Madame Scruton and friends, colleagues of Sir Roger Scruton who knew him personally. From these memories, it was made once again obvious what a tremendous effect Roger Scruton had on the development of political thinking and political making in Hungary and Central Europe. I represent a think tank, Nézőpont Intézet, directed by Ágos Tomráz, that was founded in 2006 in the spirit that also conservative thoughts and policies can and should have think tanks. More broadly, my generation was reinforced that conservative thinking does not have to be necessarily be on a defensive, as we had been used to it in the 90s. Sir Roger Scruton was a protagonist in this revolutionary turn, as evidenced, for example, by these intellectual nests called the Scruton Cafes. Well, Ákos quoted my long title, Problems. I deliberately use recent opportunities and challenges, and although the title bears the word recent, I will talk more about the past, and I hope that it will give my reflection on the present and recent decades. So challenges and opportunities. As I heard from an ex-ambassador called Stefano Pontecorvo in Rome at a conference, Roman Conservatism, brilliant conference organized by Francesco Giubilei, leader of the Nazione Futura movement. Everything is an opportunity, you just have to know how to use it. As of 24th of February 2022, one could get the impression from reading certain press organs typically linked to the New York Media Development Investment Fund, so shortly said the Imperium of George Soros, that Hungarian-Polish friendship is dying every month, again and again. We often read that words, crisis, crisis, and that was it. But now it's really the end of it. Okay, but now it's definitely. By the way, we have gotten used to the fact that here in Hungary, for example, democracy also dies every month for 14 years, and it used to be dying for 8 years in Poland, and then suddenly it came to life again. But these kind of articles and views were already expressed, had already been expressed all over the last decades, right after the 90s, Gazeta Wyborcza 91, that it's over already, 2000, I don't know which year, Index Hungarian digital medium saying that it's not cool anymore, Hungarian-Polish friendship, and so on and so on. We will see, or I will propose an explanation why. So back to the recent challenges and opportunities. It is true that these recent months mark an interesting period of the Hungarian-Polish friendship, yet I prefer to use the word challenge and opportunity not in search of some euphemism, but because the 1,000-year-long history of Hungarian-Polish relations proves that one of the important elements of the friendship stems from the fact that the two nations are driven by somewhat different geopolitical forces, and that is why they, from time to time, seem to evaluate differently certain geopolitical situations on the surface, even if deep down the interests are identical, as we also will see. How come these differences might contribute to friendship, you might ask? Well, these differences also evoke partly different interests. That is why, no matter the vicinity, nearly ever in the 1,000 years history, these two states considered each other enemies, which is quite, or adversaries, which is quite rare ever in the world, but in this region especially. Always, where the nations and countries are always outplayed by the great powers. But obviously, the difference in evaluation of certain historical moments might bring about situation when honest arguments and debate is needed. Yet these moments have not shaken the friendship over the last 1,000 years. Although the geopolitical realities of the two countries are somewhat different, yet they share the most important aspect. Both states have always been in the conflict zone of great powers. Partly as a result, the two countries have shared a similar fate that can be grasped in one word: freedom. Fighting for gaining and retaining freedom, sovereignty, is the key aspect that connects these two nations. Being in the conflict zone of great powers is the main reason why the words of Józef Wysocki, commander of the Polish Legion 1848-49, you might know that more than 4,000 Polish voluntarily legionnaires took part in the Hungarian freedom fight for the common freedom, as it was written in the flags of the Legion. So the words of Józef Wysocki have repeatedly been confirmed, which condensed goes like this: without the independence of Poland, independence of Hungary cannot be maintained. To put it simply, Wysocki grasped the essence of this friendship. The freedom and sovereignty of the two countries are mutually dependent, not necessarily in a direct cause and effect relationship, but often in a symptomatic one. So, in the long term, it is inconceivable to have a geopolitical situation in which one country is free and the other is not. I will divide my presentation into three parts. First, I will try to grasp the essence of the Hungarian-Polish friendship. I won't be able to list, not even briefly, all the beautiful chapters of this history. I will rather try to filter out some of the most important factors that contribute to the solidity of this relation. Secondly, I will talk about the period lasting from 2015 till last fall, the change of the government, with the obvious reference to the seizure of 24th of February 2022. In this part, I will mainly focus on the nature of the globalist disinformation campaign that has always tried to poison Central European cooperation, and also point out the perception of the current status of the Hungarian-Polish relation, and the depiction in the globalist media has been by far worse than it is in reality. By the way, if I mention this disinformation campaign, we heard in the presentation of President Németh Zsolt that also Sir Roger himself was a victim of some manipulative depiction, him being a supporter of the Central European cooperation. In the third part, I will speak briefly about the thrilling challenge posed to the Hungarian-Polish friendship by the recent government change in Warsaw. Which are the fields of cooperation on an intergovernmental level, and which are those on an international party level on the horizon of the European politics. Many of the following thoughts can be found in some earlier articles and interviews. I am grateful for this opportunity to assess them in such an honoring company. So, about the nature of the Hungarian-Polish friendship. The strength and authenticity of the Polish-Hungarian friendship is shown well in the fact that there's a proverb, this might be known, or it's known for Hungarian and Polish guests, but might be surprising to non-Hungarian and Polish guests, that there's a proverb in both in Poland and Hungary that states that the two are friends, they fight and drink together. Actually, to wake you up, when I thought that I will be speaking at 3 o'clock, I thought that I will make you recite this proverb, in the Hungarian in Polish and the Polish in Hungarian. But since I see that you are with me, I'm really grateful and we can go on. So, Polak, Węgier, dwa bratanki, ido szabli, ido szklanki. as I already referred to it, the two states share a similar trajectory over their history. Both were founded at the end of the first millennium, and their 1,000-year-long adventure can be similarly divided into two main parts. They take root and consolidate in the Western world in the first half of the millennium, and in the second, they are constantly fighting to defend and regain the sovereignty they have acquired. Hungary typically fought for self-determination within the Habsburg Empire and against the Ottoman Empire, whereas Poland was grinding between the Habsburg Empire, the Russian Tsardom, and Prussia. Nonetheless, withstanding the great power pressure was embedded already at the beginning of their statehood. By embracing Western Christianity and by the dynastic marriages between the first Polish and Hungarian dynasties, the Piast and Árpád dynasties, the two nations tried to level the pressure of great powers by cooperating. This east-west pressure exerted by the Holy Roman Empire and Byzantium was thought to be counterbalanced by a south-north alliance stretching from the Italian peninsula. Please note that the mutually benefiting cooperation with the Pope in Rome was counterbalancing at the time much more powerful Byzantium, so from the Italian peninsula to the Baltic. The historical predecessor of the Visegrad cooperation, the King's Meeting in Visegrad 1335, which was initiated by Hungarian King Caroberto of Anjou, also aimed to outmaneuver a great power. As we know, one of the priorities of this meeting was to create a path, a commercial path that avoided Vienna. So just in brackets, in the Visegrad cooperation's DNA, there is the Italian Renaissance political experience. Caroberto married the daughter of Kazimierz de Cecchi, Casimir III, Elizabeth Lokietek from Poland, and his son Ludovic became both King of Poland and King of Hungary. In Poland, he is known as Ludovic of Hungary. Throughout his life, he tries to regain the family's territories in the Italian peninsula, and his south-north cooperation from Italy to the Baltic remains one of the priorities of the Hungarian foreign policy till the appearance of the Ottoman Empire in Europe, which then consumes the largest part of all the political energy. Yet, in the cultural field, this unified south-north space was realized partly. The Italian humanism reached Polish kingdom through the Hungarian royal court. A quick jump, very quick and very big, 700 years forward. If we recall, when Fidesz left the European People's Party in 2021, the very first meeting hosted by Viktor Orban was a meeting with the Polish Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki and Italian senator, leader of the back then most powerful conservative Italian party, Matteo Salvini. One might have thought, obviously, that it was just by marking the new direction of the party, it was just answering the political reality. And partly it's true, because Mr. Morawiecki was the only prime minister of a big member state with a conservative policies, whereas Matteo Salvini, together with Giorgia Meloni, were already anticipating to become another one. But as we see, this triangle has an organic history in the Hungarian foreign policy that dates back, by the way, to the period that is considered to be the golden age of the Hungarian kingdom, that is the Anjou period. So this kind of South-North regional cooperation in the heart of Europe proved to be in the interest of both countries as early as the Middle Ages. Yet there's another compound to the friendship. Interests and what would be the other? Please. That can be interest. Values, yes, more. Interest and love. That was the... But actually, it's good that you haven't, because I will talk that it is hard to grasp love in an international political sphere, and basically this creates some problems at times. These were the words used by a certain Teofil Łapinski, a Polish officer in the already mentioned the Polish Legion. And he summed up the essence of relationship in these two words together. Miłość I interes. But love is indeed difficult to think about and to grasp on an international context, as it is an irrational element that seems to be meaningless in a political sphere. Yet, for example, Balázs Orbán, the political director of the Hungarian Prime Minister, referred to such an irrational element at the Hungarian-Polish political discussion at the Scruton VP in June 2022. In addition to interest, said Balázs Orbán, there is also an irrational element to Polish friendship, to Hungarian-Polish friendship. We simply love each other, or simply like each other. What could be the basis of such an irrational element that holds together whole societies? How does such an element enter the collective memory of a nation? I assume that in the case of the recent history of Hungarian-Polish friendship, it is partly a matter of the accumulation of countless individual experiences. Individual experiences such as for Hungarians, meeting Polish hosts who welcomed and opened up their homes for Hungarian hitchhikers, for Poles, the memory of holidays in Hungary during the socialist era, etc. However, the receptiveness to these experiences is based on decisions taken by the leaderships of the two countries in crucial historical situations, such as, for example, the Hungarian arms shipment during the Bolshevik-Polish War in 1920, which played a key role in the Battle of Warsaw, the acceptance of Polish refugees in 1939 by the Hungarian, or the Polish support for the Hungarian in the Revolution of 1956, which was expressed in the form of blood donation that exceeded alone from Poland those coming from the other part of the world combined, public and private donations, and solidarity demonstrations. The intelligentsia keeps track of these crucial moments. Through the intelligentsia, they enter the public education, and the knowledge about the heroism of the predecessors make everyday citizens more perceptive of everyday gestures. They are more willing to visit the other country, buy their products, etc. Let us talk about the rational parts again of the friendship. I have already mentioned similarities regarding the approach to great powers and the differences in the geopolitical realities. Poland is exposed to possible attacks from east and west direction on the northern European plain, difficult to defend. Those attacks can occur simultaneously, as happened most recently at the beginning of the Second World War. The Kingdom of Hungary, on the other hand, was well defended by the Carpathian Mountains to the east and west, as well as to the north, where Poland could have been a potential threat. But the natural border of the Carpathians was such a barrier between the two kingdoms that cooperation seemed far more obvious, and the two countries considering each other's territory as a potentially conquerable one was basically out of question. First dynastic and then interstate cooperation was then following in the last century by relying on each other. The two nations could count on each other in their struggles to gain and retain freedom. From the end of the 18th century, the common freedom, already quoted, written in the flags of the Legion, became wider and wider known. The so-called second anthem of Hungary, the Szózat, a poem by Vörösmarty Mihály from 1836, has famous verses known by everybody, a sír, hol nemzet süllyed el, in the translation of Watson Kirkconnell, and the grave where the nation is lowering, nations surround, and in the millions of people's eyes, a tear of mourning wells. A nép, hol nemzet süllyed el, a sír, hol nemzet süllyed el, népek veszik körül, és az embermilliók szemében könnyül. And not even all of the Hungarian knows that these lines refer to Poland. Anachronistically saying, these were the first decades when those who were thinking politically, also in a wider groups, made it, or it was made from them clear that the fate that happens in Poland or in Hungary can happen to the other country as well. But what about the threats to Hungary from the south? The struggle with the Ottoman Empire, determined the history of the country for nearly 3 centuries, consuming the growth potential of Hungary that made Western Europe flourish in the 16th and 17th century. If you have to name one Pole in connection with these wars, most people in Hungary will probably think of Jan Sobieski, who saved Vienna. But it is revealing that one of the basic principles of Polish foreign policy before, in the preceding period, was that war should not be waged with the Ottoman Empire, and so no war broke out between Polish-Lithuanian state and the Ottomans from the armistice of 1525 till 1621. These centuries already have made it clear that there are great power threats to one of the countries which the other does not consider to be involved. In the same way that the Poles did not feel that they should take part in the seemingly endless warfare between the Hungarians and the Ottomans, Hungary did not feel that it should take the same position as the Poles on the Russian aggression, rather than representing Hungarian interests and those of which Hungary considered to be Europe's interest, ceasefire and peace negotiation. And with this, I arrived to the second part of this presentation, the period 2015-2023. These 8 years were by far the most flourishing period over the last decades, or even centuries, at least till 24th of February 2022. 5 years after the Fidesz-KDNP's victory in Hungary 2010, Poland also elected a right-wing government in 2015. This opened a promising new chapter in the history of the two countries and thus to the Central European cooperation. Many of Sir Roger Scruton's friends became leaders of their country. For example, Marek Kuchcinski, mentioned by Marek Martraszek, became Marshal of the same. Although the end of the Cold War and the fall of the Iron Curtain would have made it possible earlier, from the early 90s, for the countries of Central Europe to take their destiny in their own hands and make regional cooperation a priority, the often unstable coalition governments of these nations were mostly competing with each other to curry favor with the great powers, rather than to give weight to common interest by acting together. The governments of Fidesz and Poland's Law and Justice, PiS, have brought about a radical change, because both in Budapest and Warsaw, the national interest has become the most important political driving force. Regional policy has also become priority, since the national interest directly implies the need to promote cooperation in Central Europe. In addition, Hungarian-Polish relations have also been strengthened by the interdependence generated by external political and media pressure. The fact that both governments took courageous steps to promote economic sovereignty of their countries was an infringement on the interests of foreign globalist elites. Their resentment was aggravated by the fact that the Visegrad Cooperation, which represented the voice of 65 million EU citizens, had repeatedly become an influential factor in the European politics, with the Hungarian-Polish tandem holding it together. With Warsaw's weight and Budapest's political experience, Central Europe has become not only a bearer, but also a shaper of the European affairs. Moreover, the success of the Hungarian and Polish right-wing models, which rejected immigration as a panacea, put a stop to the atomization of societies by strengthening families, offered a former left-wing electorate a return to the honor of work rather than subsidies, made the globalist elites increasingly fearful of their own power in their own countries, as opposition seeking national self-determination looked to the two countries as a reference points. Giorgia Meloni's victory in Italy proved that they were right to fear. The Hungarian and Polish achievements have also exposed the falsity of the mantras promoted by globalists, such as the need to overcome nations, the need to maintain Europe's competitiveness through immigration, the need to meet the needs of individuals rather than families, and the inevitability of crises that accompany these processes. Hence, the desperate anger with which the globalists attack Hungary and Poland. These attacks were waged on political and on media level. At a political level, this desperation went so far that in order to achieve their goals, they made mockery of the very foundations of the European Union, the treaties, the Charter of the Fundamental Rights, and rules of the European institutions. For example, the way they infringed the competencies of the member states in relation with the Polish judicial reforms, or the way they disregard the right of parents to decide how to educate their children in Hungary, which is, as we know, part of the Charter of the Fundamental Rights. This desperation has also fueled this disinformation campaign to foment distrust in the communication space between Hungary and Poland. One of the most striking examples when during the 2020 years and European Council negotiations on the next EU budget, suddenly Reuters wrote an article that the Poles withdrew their support from the Hungarian. Suddenly I got messages from all over my friends. It turned out that Jaroslav Govin, a leader of a micro-party with 1%, said, back then in the coalition, said in some room of the European Commission that he is not, in his opinion, as a party leader, in his opinion, this is not the right way they should act. And this was presented as an official stance of the government just because this politician, Jaroslav Govin, was also part of the government. So this is how it worked. But back then, obviously, the cooperation was strong enough to reject these attacks. Jaroslav Kaczynski, leader of Law and Justice, stated that even after the Hungarians achieved during the negotiation what they wanted, still could be counted on to achieve the Polish interest as well. At the same time, the interdependence of the two black sheep has led to an ever-growing threat to the stability of the friendship. When two actors can only rely on each other to such an extent that there is to such an extent that they have to agree on everything, there is an inevitable expectation that they must agree really on everything. This, in turn, makes it more difficult to run pragmatic, interest-based politics that is the key to successful Central European alliance. Hungarian-Polish relations between 2015 and 2022 were more like love relation than friendship. A current opportunity deriving from the last months is that it can become, again, an honest friendship, where an honest dialogue can be driven. Even if we disagree, even if we have different points of view, people in love tend to overlook differences. Friends can speak directly and honestly. I will jump a little bit. So, already back at, I myself remember that already at these years, the position of Hungary towards Russia was a neurologic point, but the Polish politicians, policymakers did not really want to speak about, and there were so many everyday issues that the two countries have to collaborate, that simply there was no dialogue on it, and thus it was not made clear that the positions are far closer than they were depicted by this disinformation campaign, which on the 24th of February received a topic that suddenly dominated exclusively the communications space, and in that communication noise, it was not possible anymore to run a genuine dialogue. The main difference, because there was indeed main difference in the position, Hungary said that Russia would remain a considerable actor, and another Iron Curtain will lead to the region's decline as it becomes periphery. Also in Hungary's position, there was the bitter experience of 1956, where Hungary was exposed, first heated by some American channels, then left alone. And also 1849, which we not talk that much. Before the Russian intervention into the freedom fight, the Russian ambassador asked a representative of the Palmerston government how would England react if Russia intervenes, and the answer was make it quickly. So these, and in such kind of moments, these crucial similar moments of history, they seem to be on the same, very imminent. So this is what drives, these are also important pieces of experiences that drive the Hungarian position. Poland, on the other hand, believes or believed that this is a historic moment to break Russia, and that the disruption on its sphere of influence could not only strengthen the security, but also give an opportunity to Central Europe to extend their influence, obviously their security, and the latter could have promising results, especially for Poland, given its size. Also, they were now, with the experience that we've seen, for example, how Mr. President Zelensky acted during the last campaign, so the Poles were also back then a little bit blindly relying on the support of the American Democrats in the hope that they will help to pressure the European Commission to give funds, so that none of this happens. However, the strategic goal of the countries are identical, as pointed out by Viktor Orban. And this strategic identical point is to keep the Russian threat on the region as low as possible. And for that, it is essential to have a free, sovereign country, Ukraine, between our region and Russia. And also, the Hungarian politicians repeatedly said that also they stand, obviously, for territorial integrity. But none of this was quoted in the Polish media, nothing about the biggest humanitarian aid granted for Ukraine, nothing about the refugees being granted. This information machine picked out half sentences from statements of Hungarian and Polish politicians that weakened the cooperation and silenced those who spoke of the importance of the cooperation. A very good example was, for example, when a journalist of TVN, TVN quoted falsely a sentence by Viktor Orban for Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki during an opening ceremony of a barn, so nothing to do with foreign politics. Prime Minister Viktor Orban said before that the ways of Hungary and Poland parted with regard to the war. The gentleman quoted only, "Is it true that the ways of Hungary and Poland parted? And how do you imagine the cooperation with Fidesz?" Mr. Morawiecki said that it is true that they parted with respect to the war, and he omitted to answer, obviously, with not to be wanted provocated about the cooperation with the party. At that time, he already said that it's time to return to the V4 cooperation. Obviously, they only quoted that Morawiecki, the ways of Hungary and Poland parted. The same gentleman, 3 days after, stopped Mr. Ryszard Terlecki at the corridor of the same group leader of Law and Justice, asking the same question. Mr. Terlecki answered, Polish-Hungarian relations are solid, so niezruszone. Obviously, no one quoted it. So this is how this machinery works, and the opportunity deriving from it, also referring to the presentation of President Zsolt Németh, is that, as said in the, I think, priorities of the Windsor Club, to create bridges. So not to let those drive the narrative of the Central European cooperation who were always adversaries to this cooperation. And just in bullet points about the third point, because obviously it's a thrilling challenge what will happen now. I like very much Baltasar Gracian, a Baroque Spanish political analyst. He was a bishop who said in his Art of Worldly Wisdom, neither is love nor hate forever, neither in love nor in hate forever trust the friends of today as they will be enemies tomorrow, and that of the worst kind. On the other hand, leave the door of reconciliation open for enemies, and so on and so on. So we know that Prime Minister Viktor Orban and Prime Minister Donald Tusk had a very good personal relationship. From a Hungarian point of view, Donald Tusk was an important actor in the Central European cooperation. Mr. Tusk himself says that it was, among others, Viktor Orban to persuade him to take the presidency of the European Council because many thought that it would be beneficial for the region. And from the Hungarian point of view, someone in 2016-17, he drifted away from the regional cooperation. Basically, he has some very huge political debts from the globalist elite that were, many say, at least present and helped with different manners the campaign of the civic platform, for example. Just one example, for example, when the European Parliament held a debate on a topic of the opposition campaign using the narrative of the opposition. But we will see how the reaction of the new government will be. There are certainly topics that need cooperation, such as the most importantly security. Also, illegal migration, at least till the next presidential elections, might be a topic where the new government most probably will adhere to the promise of Mr. Tusk, saying that no forced distribution will take place in Poland. There is the issue of the Ukrainian grain, so protecting the region's agricultural market. And we also might add that also the geopolitical vision of Mr. Viktor Orban and Donald Tusk seem to be closer, because if we recall, Donald Tusk also said some weeks ago that no matter who wins the elections in America, so even if Joe Biden, from his point of view, Europe should work on being able to run more autonomous politics, or he referred to it. At the same time, obviously, the Fidesz party will have to, or most probably will, collaborate with Law and Justice on a European party level on topics like defending sovereignty, and we see that not only tradition and culture, but and the member states' competences are in danger by the EU imperialist reforms. But already these conservative parties has to step up for freedom of speech, for democracy, and even to the treaties. An interesting actor might be PSL, which is part of the Polish government, so the Tusk government. On the inaugural session of the same, Marek Sawicki, the president for the inaugural session, said that we like the EU as it is, and not surprisingly, he was not applauded by his own coalition partner. So, to summarize it, the most important challenge is to fight this constant disinformation campaign. We can do it by creating immediate and direct channels and bridges. And the opportunity, again, is to make from this sometimes very uplifting, but as it was shown, not very useful emotion in international politics, love, we can build a steady, solid friendship for the next 1,000 years. And with this, sorry, just one point, because it was also important, that the V4 summit, no matter there were counter fans that hope that Poland will say no to V4 summit, took place. So there are signs that reinforce that this Central European cooperation we'll see if it will flourish or it will just function, but that it is not in imminent danger. We see signs for that. And for sure, it will be a thrilling and interesting period. Thank you very much.